Okay, more real anthroposophy with the world famous Joel Went. Okay, so we've been doing what? We've been doing some thinking about how the double influences things that go on in the world, and trying to understand that this is the way the creation is set up. It's meant to be this way, and also let's recognize that not only do you have impulses from Eraman and Lucifer that enter into the social life of humanity in huge ways, like today, for example, with the economic crisis, but you also have the higher element, the higher I, acting as conscience inside of individuals, and they have to not do it, or they do something else. So you get these other things that happen in human life. You get you get Doctors Without Borders, and you get people giving to the Red Cross, and you get people going down to the Gulf to help out with the situation with the oil spill down there and all this other stuff. You get all this human activity which comes from the moral element, which comes through us again. The higher element of the I comes through our experience of conscience and enters into our life. So the world is this mix of all these things, but all of it is coming through us. Now it's important to recognize this coming through us, because this is what enables the human being to engage in a kind of battle with manifestations of evil, because it's got to come through us. And of course, you can go into the Gospels, and this gives a much richer and deeper understanding of what Christ was saying when he says, "Judge not, lest ye be judged," and when he talks about the mote and the beam. This judgment, this beam thing that comes out of us, and is the way we look at the world, this is encouraged. Now we're developing further, we can say, how this is encouraged by the devil, to look at people in a kind of nasty way, as being less than us, or somehow there's something wrong with them, and we judge them, and we have all these ways that we do this. And Christ says, no, that's not a good idea. You need to learn to be able to stop that. And of course, what's he referring to? Who's he talking to? Well, he's talking to the upper element ego. He's talking to our higher I, which manifests in us as conscience. And so in the development of the Christ impulse over the 2,000 years since the incarnation, you have all kinds of things happening as this war goes on between these different spiritual forces which impinge in different ways onto the social life of humanity. And it's possible to look at history, for example, and to have it come alive in a different way when we realize that this progressive element, say, of the evolution of consciousness, and all of that is related to, got to make a note on time, related to this battle that's actually going on inside the soul life of the human being, by which he lets more or less of these elements of his interior existence free into the world through his own activity. So now in the age of the conscious soul, in the fifth post-Atlantic epoch, we need to come awake to that. And we don't awake to it by looking at the world outside us. We look inside us, and we become awake to how we participate. How we don't master our temper and we say an unkind thing, or we don't master the thoughts related to our temper and we think unkind thoughts about people. There was a video that just ran around today about some guy, an English guy, ranting and raving, went around on the internet ranting and raving about the fact that there's going to be this big mosque built near Ground Zero in New York. And everybody's getting all upset with this, and it's raised a fervor of this anti-Islam, anti-Muslim passion, as if the whole Muslim world got together and had a Congress and decided, well, let's really screw with the minds of those people in the West. Let's build a $100 million mosque as close as we can to Ground Zero. I mean, that's the basic way this guy presented it, okay? And that's because he's all beam and no mote. He doesn't understand how to think into the world and sort of live in the shoes of the other guy and recognize that it's only a tiny part of the totality of the world that believes that religion that is doing this, you know, which is causing all this uproar. And of course, that's a whole big part of what goes on in the world today. You know, but that's another thing. I do want to back up a little bit historically now, because we've got some ways of looking at this, and I want to talk about something that Steiner called the Ahrimanic deception. And in my writing, I've sort of adjusted that, because I think in the consciousness soul, we don't have to stick precisely to the way Steiner expressed things, and that I want to call it the Ahrimanic enchantment. I think that gives us a concept that's beautiful. That's the thing I didn't like about egregore. An egregore or psychic parasite, that's not a very beautiful concept. You know, the truth is good and beautiful. And that's why I talk about wounds and self-generated wounds. Let's put some beauty on this. So the Ahrimanic enchantment. Well, what happened? Well, here, this is a book here by a Canadian anthroposophist, really interesting book called Evolution in the New Gnosis, Anti-Establishment Essays on Knowledge, Science, Religion, and Causal Logic. Don Cruz is the main writer, and then he had a co-writer, a guy by the name of Robert Zimmer, that worked with him. Okay. What does he talk about in there? Well, he talks about a lot of different things, but one of the main things he talks about is evolution, right? Evolution in the new gnosis. And we have this theory in the world, the theory of evolution. And it's a very big deal. And it's important to sort of appreciate the nature of this big deal. And that's where I want to go next, you know. And I'll start this in this video, and then of course I'll have to pause it because of time constraints and pick it up. But basically, let me make a kind of story, you know, to help us appreciate the dynamics here. Let's say you go to a party with a friend, and it's a party that has a number of people that you've never met before that are strangers, and you look across the room. I'll do it from a guy point of view, and you see you're single, and you see a pretty woman, and she's talking to another guy, and you say to your friend, "Oh, do you know her?" And the friend says, "Oh, yeah, that's Jean, and that's her boyfriend John." And you go, "Oh well." Now later in the day, you know, later in the evening, you're in a situation and you find yourself standing next to Jean, and you start talking to her because she's attractive and you're attracted to her, and she starts to flirt with you a little bit, and you like that, but all of a sudden there's something that bothers you because she's got this boyfriend, and you kind of glance away from her and you look around for him, and at a certain point you notice he's watching you. All right? And you decide to play the situation in a certain kind of way. You decide, well, I can't really do that. I can't really follow up on this. I'd really like to maybe get to know her better, but she's got a boyfriend, and I don't know why she's flirting with me. Maybe she's a bit dangerous. So you back away and you leave the party, and that's the end of it. I'm going to pause here. You'll have to go to the next video for the end of the story.